Hello, everybody. So, how long does it take to become fluent in another language? And first of all, hello, I'm Tara Bachland, and eu falo português e también hablo el español. And so, this is all going to be in English, but with my previous experience in learning languages, I'm just going to give you some tips and hints and tricks in how to improve your language skills. We are going to focus on English, and I'm going to work on speaking at a slow and clear pace so you can use this in your continued education. I'm a huge proponent of the Duolingo app and software. And there is a point when you're learning a language where you get beyond certain tools. And let me turn on my do not disturb here just a moment. Sorry about that. Video recording 101, the basics. So there's a point where you may have a book or attending a class and you are just beyond the basics, but you may be wondering, what is the next step? How do I improve my language skills? And that's what this is all about. So first of all, fluent. What does it mean to be fluent? Well, of course, if we break down the word fluent, its derivative is in the word to be smooth, to be fluid like, right? And so what that means is that we can speak a language very smoothly. And granted, there are times in our own language that we have a hard time speaking fluently. But so that raises the question, what does it mean to be fluent? Now, as I looked at my LinkedIn profile, for example, and LinkedIn, as you may know, is a social media platform for business. And when I go to LinkedIn, now I have to find it. I have it all prepped and ready to go. Let's see, here it is. I noticed that what can be difficult about distinguishing what it means to be fluent is different sources have different definitions. So for example, in LinkedIn, which you may be advertising, of course, how fluent you are in one or another language, this is how LinkedIn defines different levels of fluency: elementary proficiency, limited working proficiency, professional working proficiency, full professional proficiency, and native or bilingual proficiency. Now, I'm a native English speaker, and I list myself as being having professional working proficiency in Portuguese and Spanish. Now, there are times where I vacillate. I go between. I wonder, well, should I list limited working proficiency? Well, here's a caveat. Here is where we might get hung up or question which level to use, because it depends on the vocabulary. It depends on which professional, correct? We can experience this in our very own language, in our native language. For example, in English, my vocabulary for, let's say, brain surgery may be very limited, but my vocabulary in my profession, in production, video production, making online content. We also have a business that is in the machining realm, micro machining, molding. My vocabulary is much larger, and my ability to construct sentences and make sense in those realms is much more proficient and more fluent. So when we raise the question, how do we become fluent? It is being clear in what arena, in what areas of life do you want to be fluent? So maybe you just want to be fluent, be able to speak smoothly with friends and family or new friends that you meet. Maybe you want to become fluent in your area of business and work. That would be another vocabulary and another way of speaking. So to start out this conversation, I would just like to propose that you get specific with yourself. What does fluency mean? What area of life do you want to have a smooth way of conducting in conversation and even in thought. As you can see, even in English, I still stumble, kind of fall over my words. And so none of us, sometimes all of us are not fluent in our own languages even. Okay, so next, I want to show this really great article by Duolingo as well. Like I said, I am a fan of Duolingo. I wish it was around when I was learning language, although I managed to still get along. The big thing for me in becoming fluent and having conversational fluency is practice. No matter what, you have to practice, practice, practice. Excuse me. So that's number one. But like I said at the beginning, you're practicing early on is going to be vocabulary. It's going to be studying flashcards and understanding the basics of grammar. But later, your practice is going to be different. And this is where I come into play. Learn English with Tara, because at a certain point, it's really about practicing in conversation, hearing and listening to people speak the language and striving, working to understand what they are saying. So in Learning English with Tara or Learn English with Tara, what I will be doing is reading some articles, having some conversation to you, and please do respond below in English with your comments, with your questions. And here we go. So this is to practice your next level of language skill, which is listening to hear if you understand. And when you listen as someone is reading, it's much, you'll pick up and learn much more and much faster. Okay. Now, I don't know how to say some of these words. I've heard them, but so correct me if I'm wrong here. But I know felicidades, mazel tov, and I believe it's auguri. Is that correct? Let me know if you speak. I believe that's Italian. So congratulations on beginning your language learning journey. One of the hardest parts of studying a language is sticking with it, because it takes a long time to build up proficiency. So you might be wondering what sticking with it means. That is a phrase that we will come back to. Actually, let's address it right now because it's in context, right? It's in the sentence. So to stick with it, stick, remember, means to, well, in Portuguese it's grudar, and you can bind them together. Something to another thing is sticky is another word that we like. Honey might be sticky. So sticking with it means to continually be stuck to it, keep going, bound together. Okay. So one of the hardest parts of studying a language is sticking with it, because it takes a long time to build up proficiency. While it will take years to sound as smart as you do in your first language, there's good news. There's good news. You can feel comfortable and even conversational in your new language after a few months. For learners studying languages that are pretty similar to English, like Spanish, French, and German, here's how much you can expect to learn along the way. So this is a comparison, of course, if you're a native English speaker, and they're giving some comparisons. How to develop language goals. We've said it once and we'll say it again. You don't need to be fluent to be conversational. That's a good distinction. You can be conversational as a beginner at the intermediate level and as an advanced learner. Instead, decide what proficiency level you'll need to accomplish your goals. The levels A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2 come from the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, CEFR, the international standard that Duolingo uses to guide course development. Many learners are surprised by how much vocabulary and grammar are covered in the beginner levels, A1 and A2. Well, that's the basics, right? Even as we're children, we're learning vocabulary all the time and in context. in the environment, which is really the best way to learn. But not all of us can travel to another country and live in that country to learn the language. So I think Duolingo is a terrific way to do that in your own land. Here are other factors to consider when deciding how long it will take to reach your goals. Time spent studying. Building a consistent study habit is important for language learning. You'll need to practice a little at a time for a long time instead of binging occasionally. Here's a good word, binging. Binging is most commonly used in English when we talk about eating, and maybe you haven't had chocolate cake in a while or cookies, and you binge, you just eat a bunch of it just because you've craved it so much or for whatever reason. So that would be binging. So yes, I agree. Consistently studying language a bit at a time is key, is essential to learning a language well. What your goal is, if you're aiming to reach higher proficiency levels like B1 or B2, that will naturally take a lot longer than to reach the end of A1. So yeah, just like at the beginning, I said, be clear on what your goal is. And it's good to make stepping stones, right? Stepping stones. So from a stepping stone would be a stone that maybe is in a little stream or a river, and you step, or in a garden that takes you across the path. So step by step, make a reasonable goal that you can reach step by step. Okay, how much you use the language. You'll learn more and faster the more you use the language. So it'll be important to incorporate it into your hobbies and routines. That can include watching movies and TV in the language, building your own playlists, switching the language of your phone, that's a good one, and even using video games to learn. I like at the intermediate, more advanced level, I like switching the language on the phone. I would say more advanced, because when you're more intermediate, you can get lost. It will switch and you might not know the word, for example, for wallpaper or certain features that are on the phone, and you might kind of lock yourself out of your phone. But in general, I love these suggestions, and I love listening to podcasts in Spanish and Portuguese and so forth. Movies are easier to find these days, so I absolutely highly recommend these suggestions as well. Whether you know other languages, the more languages you know or are familiar with, the easier it gets to learn a new one. Your brain becomes better able to adapt to new grammar patterns, different ways of expressing ideas, and even new sounds. I totally agree with this one. I started out with German. I don't list it as a proficiency. I have low proficiency in that these days, but it definitely set the foundation for me to learn other languages, but also actually learned English better once I started learning German. For example, the difference between, well, actually it was Portuguese that taught me the difference between good and well in English. But this is totally true. The third language for me was much easier than the first couple. How similar your languages are. For English speakers, learning similar languages like Spanish, French, and German, you'll often be able to guess about new words and will already be familiar with some grammar. But that doesn't mean that everything will be easier. That's true. It can be helpful, and you can get in trouble sometimes because there are what are called, I'm sorry, I'm speaking a little bit quickly, and I'm going to try to slow myself down. There are what are called false cognates. So they sound similar, but they are not the same. An example in German, which is really funny, is rock is not a rock. It actually means skirt. And there are similar examples in other languages that can really get you in trouble or can be really funny. I have some stories I won't share now, but the big key to learning a language and learning it well is, most of all, make sure to have fun and get good at laughing at yourself. Other people are going to laugh anyway, so you might as well join in and have fun. The article goes on to explain the different levels. Again, here's another level system that is fairly common out there and that Duolingo uses. And also, it looks like this is also some feedback based upon learners of what they learned within 1 month of study, 6 months of study, and 1 year of study. And absolutely how they began, the consistency is key. It doesn't have to be a lot. Even I found, 15 minutes a day can help you gain some knowledge, or at least maintain while you're learning. That's a big thing as well, is getting those words ingrained. Something that I would do, which actually is quite fun, is when I was learning languages, as I would see an object, and I still do it today, it's more habit now, I'll see an object and I'll say it in another language in my head, if not out loud. And that is another way to help remember the words and get them really ingrained into the mind, so that when it comes time to speak, your recall, or how quickly you can remember the words and you say it, so that would be recall, how quickly you remember the words and then you can say it, that is a key to fluency. You might have it in your head, you're thinking about it, you're like, where did I put that word? But the more you think about it during the day and repeat it, your recall will be faster. That is a very particular stage in language learning, is that you understand a lot, but speaking can be more difficult because the recall is not happening that quickly. And a hint that I would give for that is to, as you're going throughout your day, if you see an object like a plant or a picture or a wall, or maybe an expression, say it in your mind or out loud if it doesn't seem strange to say it out loud in your environment. And that will help immensely. That's a lot. Okay, so today we covered a couple of phrases, sticking with it. So stick is in Portuguese, I'm pretty sure in Spanish, I think it's grudar, but you stick with it. So you're stuck and you keep on going, stick with it. And then also binging, you might, another way that a lot of English speakers use binging, you might binge watch your favorite new TV series, or a trilogy, a movie trilogy. You might binge watch some YouTube videos, for example. But binging, it's not a good strategy when learning a language. And it seems like it might be, but consistency is really key. Okay, so that's enough for today. I think those are some really good hints, definitely ones that helped me go from just being able to understand bits and pieces to being able to speak more fluently and definitely understand better. We will cover more each time. I'll read a new and different article with different topics each time. I'll try to slow down my speech some more. I apologize. I think I was speaking rather quickly, but please leave your comments and questions below in English, and we will work on aiming to improve your fluency in English. Let us know in the comments, what level of fluency, of proficiency are you working towards? And maybe you could use the LinkedIn reference of conversational, native fluency, working professional, or maybe you use the levels from Duolingo, which are very common as well. And another one that I have on my profile is early on is the advanced placement testing. That was, as a student, a way that I could get credits for my Spanish studies. But there are different levels of proficiency, and depending on your case, you may be looking at different resources for that. So what are you aiming for? What are your goals? And I look forward to hearing from you and continuing helping you learn English. Take care, everybody.